All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular city council meeting for February 18th. Councilmember Vapurzian informed me that he was not going to be able to attend, so that leaves us one down, but everyone else is here. The invocation and pledge of allegiance will be led by Councilmember Gardner.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, Lord, and we're so thankful that we get to enjoy living in the city of Maumelle, Father, and we pray that the decisions that we make tonight and each night that this council and this government works together, Father, will be decisions that benefit your glory, Father, and that benefit our citizens here, Lord. We ask for your blessings on all those that work for our city and protect us day in and day out, and we thank you for the service that they give to our city to make it run smoothly and keep us safe each and every day. Father, again, be with us tonight as we do the matters of the city's business, and we pray these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next order of business is special guests and announcements, and I'd like to go ahead and name the Employee of the Month for January 2020 as Captain Austin Woody with the Fire Department. Mr. Woody, Captain Woody, come on in. If you want, you can join me up here, and if you don't want, you can still join me up here. I'd like to do a little proclamation here. So this is a proclamation naming Captain Austin Woody as the Mayor's Employee of the Month for January 2020 and declaring February 20th, 2020 to be Austin Woody Day in the city of Maumelle. Whereas Captain Austin Woody has served Maumelle citizens as a firefighter for over 15 years and currently serves as the officer on Tower 2 for B shift. Whereas he goes above and beyond his normal duties several times a year by conducting maintenance on different fire department apparatus, which saves the department hundreds of dollars, if not more, annually. If it is repairable at the station, Captain Woody is always willing to be the person to turn the wrench. Whereas Captain Woody's level of accountability to his position makes it a rare occasion that he's not at work for his assigned shift. Whereas Captain Woody can always be counted on to make sound judgments in those critical emergency situations. And whereas Captain Woody has proven exemplary customer service to the citizens and visitors of the city of Maumelle. Now, therefore, I, Caleb Norris, Mayor of Maumelle, on this 18th day of February, with great honor and privilege, do hereby declare Captain Austin Woody to be the Mayor's Employee of the Month for January 2020, and hereby proclaim February 20th, 2020 to be Austin Woody Day in the city of Maumelle. So we'll make sure we get a good picture here. Here you go. Thank you very much. Here, sir. You want to give a speech? No? Okay. Figured I'd ask.
And the way he goes.
I sometimes tease Chief Ezell about the Employee of the Month and that they work in teams so much that he's asked before to name whole teams or to the Employee of the Month position. And I've said, well, that'd look awfully weird on that plaque. Or entire shifts, not teams. So with that, we have the approval of the February 3rd regular meeting minutes. Y'all been provided a copy of that. Is there any discussion on that?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the minutes from February 3rd. Is there any other discussion on that matter? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Next order is public comments. I don't believe I have any public comment cards. So we'll move on to the financial statement review. Ms. Vega, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody.
So I've added some slides to the presentation so that we can see what our capital improvement fund balance is and the police and fire for the activity there. So I've also included them on the fund balance, and for the capital improvements, it's going to stay that way, 850 until next year when we appropriate more funds. The police and fire is $145,000, and then the next one is sanitation, and it's up. The 102 fund is also up to budget, and then we're a little bit down for the general fund budget. But remember, the budget is like a shot in time. So the general fund revenue, the city is up 3.2% over prior year at the same time. County millage is up 11%. Franchise fees are up 2%. And the biggest thing is our sales tax. We're finally seeing the internet sales coming through. County sales tax are up 5%, and the city sales tax are up 50%, and police and fire is up 50%, the half-cent sales tax. The street fund, overall revenue is up 15%. County millage was up 13%, state turnback up 21%, and street aid was up 4% to prior year. Sanitation fees are up 1.2% to prior year. By general fund expenditures, overall, we're up 20% to prior year, and street fund is down 25% to prior year, and the sanitation fund is down 5% in expenditures to prior year. We've already discussed that one. Okay, and this is showing our spending for the year, or for January. Police and fire were both at 27%. Parks was 9%. Public Works and Senior Services were at 4%, and City Services are at 14%. Street expenditures are down 25% to prior year, and sanitation fees are down 5% to prior year. Any questions?
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, let me make just sure I understand all this, and people in the audience may be interested too, that aren't aware of what we've done, but we now have 5 funds now, is that correct?
We do not have to show the capital fund every month if you don't want, because it's not going to change. Police and fire, so the way that's going to work is as the money comes in, it goes into the police and fire fund,
From that half-cent.
just from the half cent, and then we're going to transfer that money quarterly to the general fund for police and fire's use.
Okay. And then the 850,000, that came out of the general fund at the end of the year, is that correct?
360,000 came out of 2019, and the balance came out of 2020
Okay,
budget.
okay. All right, I think I got it.
In your financials that went out, there's a schedule showing those contributions to the capital improvement fund and how they're spread across each asset that we're saving for, so you can see the running balance and the expected cost.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Scott?
I was curious, the 25% on the street fund, which was down to prior year, is that just timing on something, or what's the reason
Timing.
for that?
Definitely timing.
That's big. Thank you.
If there is no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to accept those financials.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Vega. We will move on down to a procedural motion. I'd entertain motion to have all ordinances and resolutions read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We have no unfinished business, so we will move on to new business, which is the appointments of Planning Commission commissioners. This is going to be a little bit difficult. We have received 2 applications for the 2 positions. The first applicant is Scott Smith for position 6. If the council has any questions, or if Mr. Smith cares to say anything, now is a great time to speak, or forever hold your peace. You're going to try and talk folks into or out of visiting. A copy of your letter was presented in the council packet, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
I just like to say I feel like I was just here last year. It's been a short, quick year, so I'd just like to continue on what I started.
Right, well, apparently we didn't scare you off yet, anyway.
Not yet.
If there are any questions, I'm sure Mr. Smith would be happy to answer any. Councilmember Mosley?
More than anything, I just wanted to make a comment. The folks on the planning commission have quite a diverse background. There's a lot of people who come at it from different perspectives. Most of you have construction or engineering in your background and so forth. And you guys always amaze me. I don't think there's any way for a non-engineer to ever feel comfortable with what you all do. And but I appreciate your willingness to be involved in that.
Thank you.
We need your perspective. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Well, at this time, if there's no further questions, comments, I'd entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Scott Smith to the Planning Commission.
I move that we appoint Scott Smith to the Planning Commission vacancy.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Unanimous by all those present. Thank you for your service, sir. Next up is Mr. Fisher. He advised that he would not be able to attend tonight's meeting as he had a previously scheduled engagement. Most of y'all, I'm sure, are familiar with Mr. Fisher. So if there's no discussion on that matter, I'd entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Mike Fisher to the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Fisher, because I'm sure you're watching on video at home. With that, we will move on to the first reading of Ordinance 993, amending the annual registration fees. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, Pulaski County, Arkansas, ordinance number 993, an ordinance of the City of Maumelle, Arkansas, amending the annual registration fees for businesses and designating said fees to be paid into the Police and Fire Fund.
This is an ordinance sponsored by Councilmember Tierney, and so with that, I will allow him to introduce that ordinance. And
Hi, the way this came about, a number of years ago, I volunteered to help rewrite Little Rock's business license fee schedule. And after joining Maumelle's council, I took a look and saw some parallels with their situation. One of those similarities is scofflaw businesses, people who do not pay their business license fee. I've been told that it averages in Maumelle about 20 to 25%. And that's the same percentage that they used to suffer in Little Rock. What we did in Little Rock was changed it over to where all the monies for the business license fees go to fund the police and the fire department. And that seriously dropped it. I haven't been able to get any exact numbers, how much it dropped it, but they said it did significantly drop it because they're going to be a little bit less inclined to shortchange the people they want to call and have on the phone right away than they would the city. They just don't, give it the same, credence there. The other problem they had was that its code book was seriously outdated, still listing categories like mule skinners, hide tanners, Well, we don't have that problem in Maumelle. Our business license schedule did become outdated when our community service fee was replaced by the community, by the new half-cent sales tax. That's when a part of the business annual license fee that was calculated by the square footage of every business just went away. We basically stopped collecting the majority of the business license fee that it costs to, do business in Maumelle. So what I'm proposing here is not a new tax, but to, recoup, just a small portion of those fees that we just stopped collecting and put them into the police and fire funds. Even with the increase that's proposed here, the rates being charged to businesses will still be far lower than any other business I can find in the state of Arkansas, except Conway, which only charges ice cream vendors like $25, and that's everybody else gets free business. But to use my own business, I have businesses in Little Rock and North Little Rock, and they both pay about the same fee at each location. To use those just as a, side-by-side comparison, if those businesses were in Maumelle, as the fees are right now, I would pay 10% of what it costs to do business in Little Rock and North Little Rock for the annual fee. So the fee is almost nothing. Now it's going to be just a next to nothing. And I did talk to the the Chamber of Commerce about what their thoughts were about this, and they had absolutely no problem with it. So, does anybody have any questions?
Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, first of all, I need to ask the city attorney if I have a conflict of interest. I actually pay an annual $25 business fee. Should I recuse myself on this subject?
Are you the only one? Does anybody else pay any type of business registration fee? Let me look around in the code a little bit. I would say you're fine to sit in here and at least listen to the discussion for the next couple of weeks until we figure that out.
Okay.
Councilmember Scott?
Mr. Tierney, why did you decide to just go up as far as you did when we're so much lower than the other communities?
Well, I didn't want, this may be something we want to visit again in the future, because we're collecting drastically less. I didn't want to just completely shock the community by all of a sudden have a huge jump. Like I said, this may be something we want to visit in the future again.
Okay, thank
The first thing I'd like to see is just how much we can reduce our scofflaw businesses, people who just, do business without paying their, fair share.
Anything else, Councilmember Scott?
No, I'll wait and see what people have to say.
Councilmember Gardner?
Okay, first of all, Mr. Tierney, thank you for bringing this up. When I started going through the other cities that I could find, I was shocked. I really was. I had no idea we were charging what we were charging compared to what other cities were charging. A couple of thoughts regarding putting the funds into deposit with the police and fire fund. You kind of explained your reasoning for that. I didn't understand that initially, but my initial thought was we had the community service fee that's now gone away. That was collecting about, I'm just going to use easy math, $850,000. It may be more or less. I'm just going to use easy math. It was $850,000. Now, if you look at our budget, we're budgeting $1.4 million this year for what that community service fee went away and now it's replaced with the 0.5% sales tax. So we're basically bringing in an additional $550,000 on top of what we had before. And so my initial reaction to that was I was a little hesitant to assign more funds specifically to police and fire, seeing as how that had already gotten a boost of about $550,000. So that was my initial reaction, but you kind of explained that. The second part to that is I know the city clerk's office, and please correct me if I get off base, the city clerk's office processes and manages most of these applications. Is that right?
Correct.
So I was wondering, since they're the ones doing the heavy lifting while we were giving the proceeds to police and fire, if they had actual day-to-day duties, in processing all of this. So that was one question about the police and fire piece.
That's the same question.
Okay, yeah. And so then the other thing that I started thinking about, we're so far out of whack that that surprised me. And so Clerk Timmons and Miss Amanda were very helpful last week with getting me some information. If you look at our financials for January, we budget $30,000 annually currently for business licenses. And in the month of January, we've already brought in $10,000. And they are sent out in December or January? They're sent out in December. They're due in January. So according to what past history looks like, we've already got 10,000. Apparently, we'll have like 10, 12, 15,000 the month of February, and then the stragglers come in March on throughout the year. So the bulk of the money that we're even going to receive in 2020 has already been billed and is going to be deposited. So
Right, yeah, this won't take effect till like 2021.
exactly, yeah. And so that started my mind shifting a little bit more and thinking, could we take a look at this in more detail, since we're not making any dollar changes that are really going to affect 2020? It only would affect new businesses that come in after this law goes into effect, which if it passes, that would be April, and then it goes into effect 30 days later. Let's just say May 1, easy math again. I'm all about easy. So really, anybody that applies for a permit after May would be the only one that's going to be affected by this.
Correct, yeah.
So that kind of brings me full circle. I'm wondering, because I did not realize how far out of line we were, if this deserves a deeper dive to see if we could do anything differently, rather than making a change now and then doing a deeper dive later this year and making another change for 2021. So those are just a few of the thoughts that I had initially. So just wanted to toss that out there. But thank you for bringing this up. This,
You know, part of my thinking was, like, Conway, they don't charge anything. And that is one of our neighbors, so we are kind of in a community where we're going to take, into factor all the people around us. Now, one thing I will say, Jacksonville, that's one of the toughest cities to get a business license. You got to have a form filled out by the police department, the fire department, the code department, and another department, then you send it into the clerk, and then they tell you what your fee's going to be. So I couldn't come up with a fee from them, because you'd have to do too much of a dance first.
huh.
So we are one of the easier places, so, keeping it simple and easy, and you don't want to discourage business to come into Maumelle.
Councilmember Scott?
Yeah, and that was going to be my further comment, is the money going to the police and fire fund, and I do understand why that would have a psychological impact on people to say, well, I'm not going to, diss the people who take care of me. But who will be harmed by this money being moved from the general fund to the police and fire fund? Who benefits from it now, I guess?
It currently just goes into the general fund. It doesn't, we don't track where that money goes, like we've started to do.
So the fact that we spend more of the budget on police and fire than any of the money that's earmarked for it, there won't really be a net effect on anyone else.
Correct.
Okay.
See, another thing I
can
hope
think
too
of.
is that,
That's correct.
by increasing, the number of people who do pay, with doubling, it will actually be more than a double, because then you collect more money, then it could be a triple as far as the actual fund dollars collected.
This is on first reading. Is there any other discussion? If there is none, it'll be on second reading at the next council meeting. The next order of business is Resolution 2020-01, authorizing the marketing of 3 acres. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas. Resolution number 2020-1, a resolution authorizing the marketing of an option to purchase up to 3 acres of city-owned property located in the White Oak Bayou Watershed Wetlands area.
So, we were here a month or 2 ago, or 3, asking for up to 2 acres for us to deed restrict certain property in the wetland. It was our understanding that that would suffice for the Corps of Engineers for that site, the certified site through Entergy. It turns out that that is not going to be sufficient, and that what we would actually have to do is sell up to the acreage. We increased it from 2 to 3 acres. The mitigation, I don't think, has changed, but we're still concerned about some of the numbers being presented by the Corps of Engineers. And as much as I enjoy coming to this wonderful council to make minor amendments, I think we decided to err on the side of getting permission for more than we needed and then just selling what we needed. And so it basically, we're getting rid of that deed restriction option or idea and going to selling that land. A couple of interesting things. First of all, Ms. Keller's here to answer any questions if anyone has any, as is the city attorney. obviously. But it's been pretty interesting. I think the last month or two, maybe even going back to December, having that site as a certified site, we've had some quite a bit of interest in that property. I believe it's been shown to multiple different entities, and some asking for some pretty big square footage of buildings. And so it's been exciting to watch a site that, at least as far as I knew, hadn't received a whole ton of attention, suddenly get a lot of attention recently. So with that, if there's no discussion, I'd entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-01. Councilmember Scott.
I'm sorry, I just want to be sure that that land, even though it's sold, can't be developed. It's sold simply for mitigation purposes.
It's being sold for mitigation purposes. I believe that was in the language.
So the option, or the advertisement is very similar, the advertisement that we place would be very similar to the language that's in the ordinance itself, which specifies that it would only be, the option would only be sold for the purpose of getting a wetlands mitigation permit. And then once they had that permit, that restricts them from developing on that land as well. So I think that would be how that would kind of work together.
Thank you. Then I move that we approve Resolution 2020-1.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. We didn't even have to pick your brain, Ms. Keller. Thank you. Next up is Resolution 2020-02, amending the 2020 General Fund budget. Madam City Clerk Treasurer, if you could please read that by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Maumelle, County of Pulaski, State of Arkansas, Resolution number 2020-2, a resolution amending the 2020 budget to allocate $10,000 for the planting of new trees on city property.
So the agenda lists this as my ordinance, or my resolution. It's actually Councilmember Mosley, so I'll let him introduce it. What I've passed out right as y'all came in is the updated 2020-02 resolution. The only thing that changed is we put it into the budget amendment form, and I guess the wires got crossed last week as we were at the Municipal League and bouncing back and forth and trying to get the packet out for today. So without further ado, Councilmember Mosley, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is an amount that was in the budget, as I understood, when the mayor first introduced it, and I was excited about that. It was something that I thought would very much encourage the tree board. Our tree board is a very fragile entity here in Maumelle. Dinah Nash has pretty much held it up and together for the last year or two, and has been the backbone. But basically, she's moving to Fayetteville, and it was a boost to her and the tree board that I think that Maumelle was going to show a commitment to planting some new trees and really trying to do its best to preserve our scenic beauty here. And so I didn't realize that it had gotten cut, or I'm not sure really how it got out of the budget. I was talking to the mayor one day back in January, and he said, no, that wasn't in there anymore, and that I had missed the November budget meeting. So I don't know if it was removed then or if it just ended up accidentally falling out or what. So I wanted to put this back in. It's not my usual thing to come around with a budget resolution in the middle of the year, but because
Really not.
no, it's not. And so I feel very strongly about this, and I was very supportive of the mayor having put this in, and I wanted to go ahead and see if we couldn't get this back in the budget and do something for trees. The arguments I have are basically what I've got in the what-ases here. Trying to preserve the beauty. You know, a lot of people come here because of the beauty. I think to show a commitment to trees here would encourage people to choose Maumelle that are looking for that sort of thing. Yeah, any questions? I'm ready.
So really quickly, it didn't accidentally come out. I think it was taken out either by consensus or by vote at the budget meeting that you weren't at.
Okay.
I do want to clarify, this $10,000, so the tree board has its own budget that it sort of controls, if you will, through, or sort of advises as how that money's going to be used, and that goes through the Parks Department. This money was independent of the tree board, but the list of projects that I was looking at came from the list that I asked the tree board to put together. So I just don't want it to be thought of as this is just $10,000 going to the tree board to use for whatever. It's citywide services, but the list of projects came by recommendation from the tree board.
And I would further add just real quick that I think this was kind of a mandate. This is if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
I think city beautification is important, and I think the first thing to target is what our strength is, and our strength relative to a lot of the surrounding communities is how naturally beautiful it is. I think a beautification program can move into other things than just trees, but I think it's the start. And I passed out in one of the last council meetings, maybe it was in the council packet, the letter from Ms. Nash and the tree board's report. And in that, for anyone who studied it, showed how we currently spent some of the money that, to be a Tree City USA, we have to spend basically $2 per resident. And you can look at how that money, how we come up with that calculation. Very, very little of that is tree planting. Much more of it is dealing with the trees when they're dying, dead, fallen, and that sort of stuff. So that's my 2 cents. Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, I just have 3 questions, kind of for the record.
Okay.
Are we meeting the criteria for being a Tree City USA under the current scenario?
I think we have come up with a very creative way to reach the dollar amount.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay. How much is the tree board's budget?
$2,000. The council increased it from $1,000 to $2,000. So they y'all effectively doubled it this year.
Okay. And do they spend that money on trees?
Primarily, yes.
Okay. And is there any truly negative impact to the bottom line of the budget by adding this $10,000?
I don't know who the best person to answer that question would be. It might be the council.
Well, I was just
Do
wondering,
we
do we
pass
have-
this
do
and
we
file
have-
bankruptcy afterward? No.
Yeah, no.
If I could address that, I would term that, in accounting terms, I would call that an immaterial amount based on the amount of money we do and have in our budget. It's, $1 million would be very material, 100,000 I would say would be material. So, but 10,000 is not going to make or break us, I don't think.
I didn't see the order in which these lights came on, so we will start with Councilmember Holt.
I am very much in favor of this, to be for sure. And if I can throw a little bit of a wrench in the subject we had a few minutes ago in support of Councilman Tierney, is it conceivable that we would consider the possibility that the money from the fees might be directed toward the tree board, in that not to take anything away from our officers, of course, but anybody that puts in a new business, and the trees could be a constant revolving. With the exception of the 6 trees in my yard, if a tornado could wipe them out without destroying my house, I really wouldn't care. But beyond that, I support this, but I would wonder if you would want to just think about the possibility of letting the money from the fees go toward, to some degree, toward the tree board. So it's just a thought.
That's what, 60,000? 60,000 if this passes?
Budget 30 now.
So it's certainly conceivable, Councilmember Holt. My recommendation would be to roll it into not necessarily just to the tree board's authority, but to the city, the beautification which we're using currently for trees, if that's the way the council wanted to go.
Something along those lines, I mean.
Councilmember Williams?
I can't remember. I remember the discussion about the $10,000, but I can't remember why it was taken out. Can somebody remind me, or?
I think we were coming up to it, we were just trying to make the budget, and we were looking for just anything we could cut.
It was just new money in the budget, and we were looking at
'Cause,
big
you know,
chunks of money that
now
we could.
it does seem like a very small amount of money compared to what our general fund actually does have, $10,000.
Yeah, but we were
But-
having trouble, we
Balance.
were having trouble chopping enough off
Right.
to make the budget right. So we were looking at anything we could get.
It was one of the things that got whittled.
Yeah, takes pennies to make dollars, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we were whittling.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Tierney?
Along the lines of, we were talking about the whittling, because we were trying to meet the budget. According to Ms. Vega, we're actually collecting taxes above it, so right now we're, sounds like we're coming in over the budget where we might have the room to do this without actually throwing us into the red.
Well, I think at the, I'm sorry.
It's awfully early in January to make year predictions.
Well, I was talking
but
about how
it
the
seems
sales
like we're
tax
off
is
to a
coming in
good
higher.
start.
Right.
Okay, Councilmember Williams?
Yeah, I'm sorry. She's talking about the internet sales tax, and I don't think at the time we even had a crystal ball that could tell us how much, and that's doing very well. So I think I'm for this, actually. I think it's a good thing.
Ms. Vega, correct me if I'm wrong, the idea behind your statement is that the increase in sales tax is probably as a result of the internet sales tax? Do we have, do you?
I don't have anything from the state telling me that.
Councilmember Gardner?
So this, the $10,000, is that going to be under your control, or were you going to use the? Yeah, so that's a line item under your budget, and you would have the discretion
It's
of
in
where.
citywide services.
So you would, or Parks and Rec would have the discretion.
It'd come through me.
Okay, so so then I'll ask you my question. So this could obviously only be spent on city property. Do you have any targets of what you would like to do with those funds?
I didn't bring in the list. So what I did last year is I asked the planning, or the tree board to come up with a list of different projects in priorities. I don't necessarily think that it could only be spent on city property. I just think that's a low-hanging fruit. And I'd be making, I have it sitting on my desk, but I haven't looked at it probably since budget session. They gave me a list of about 20 different things, some of which would be very easy to knock off one or two of, and some that I don't think $10,000 scrapes the surface of.
Okay. My thought is 10,000 could go a long way, though, in certain situations, depending on what kind of trees that you purchased and planted. So, and one other follow-up regarding the earmarking of revenue for specific things. I tend to have a little bit of a problem with that, just because as a revenue source continues to grow, you have earmarked that money, which could always be changed later, but you have earmarked those funds for a certain category. And so I have a bit of a problem earmarking it when, if it were just a line item in the budget, and if it went into the general fund, then those funds could be spent however we decided. And so that kind of takes me back to the earmarking the business licenses for police and fire. So that's kind of a slope I wouldn't want to go down on the beautification project that's before us right now. So
So my mama always told me to under-promise and over-deliver. While $10,000 can go a long way for planting trees, if you're talking about some of the some of the places that are a little bit more difficult to get the trees to grow, that includes things like irrigation for when you have young trees. So in some cases, with some projects, $10,000 doesn't go far. So I just didn't want to give the impression that $10,000 means, we're not going to be able to drive down the road because we'll be crashing into trees. So
J- Just saying. Councilmember Mosley?
Yeah, I'd mention, I've actually looked up what it would cost to buy little loblolly pine seedlings. You can get like 100 for $100. They're cheap, and and here in Maumelle, we have places where in the winter it looks pretty stark. We might want to plant a bunch of pine trees in some of these areas, maybe around the community center or something, just to give it a little color in the winter and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, so, and I've had a lot of recommendations from the tree board, and their recommendations are not to buy a whole bunch of seedlings because the survival rate is so low that they think that buying slightly more mature trees, and there's 100,000 different theories on that. I think we'd be foolish to ignore them completely, or to ignore them, period. But that thought has crossed my mind, some sort of mixture between there's some areas that I think you can get I'll just throw it out, maybe a portion of the median of Maumelle Boulevard where you could plant trees, but that it's been proven to be very difficult to get those trees to survive because of the lack of irrigation. So those sort of locations, which probably have the most visibility, also are some of the places that are the least cheap or the more expensive places to plant and get trees to go. Councilmember Scott?
We probably planted like 100 seedlings down by the baseball parks a few years ago. I wonder how many of those survived. The city dug the holes and we went down and planted those trees. They were donated to us. There were just a bazillion of them, and they were seedlings.
I don't know. I know that I brought up trees back in discussions with Mayor Watson and City Clerk Clausen going back that far, and Mayor Watson's position was, I'm not planting any more trees unless we can irrigate them in certain locations, because that and Councilmember Gardner's favorite Bradford pears. No.
Can we amend this to exclude Bradford pear plantings?
I would agree to that.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
I don't have any intention of planting Bradford pears. But so whatever experiences Mayor Watson had with planting trees and watching them die was enough to disgruntle him a whole lot about planting in certain areas. Other areas, I think, as long as we can keep them from getting mowed, can survive. But
It is kind of heartbreaking, though. You know, we planted a number of fairly mature trees around the lake, and about half of them have survived. And I mean, they were expensive trees to plant. So do you get more bang for your buck by planting a whole bunch and having 10% survive, or
my theory,
50% survive?
my theory is a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
I think you get some that you're really TLC, you because you really want them in that location. I think you can find other places that you can go hog wild, and if 10% of them survive, you're making a big difference for a little bit of money. Councilmember Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two thoughts. One, and I'm sure that Councilmember Scott remembers this because we've been coming to City Council for 15, 20 years. So most of the decisions made on the City Council of this type have been focused on keep our city beautiful. That's one of the things we pride ourselves on. So if for no other reason, I would vote for this, just because it's a beautification thing. The second thing is a question probably for the mayor. I remember some time back, we planted some trees on the boulevard over there close to Sonic, down the median. And one of the problems, because it came up here in City Council, this a few years ago, but one of the problems with that was irrigation. And they had to take bladders. I couldn't think of the name. Had to keep bladders around them. And then we had to have Parks and Rec or somebody go out and fill those. And we ended up losing the trees anyway. Now, my question is this. You know, that costs money. We're adding another 10,000 here if we pass this. And we're talking about planting trees. What about the maintenance of the trees? Will that money come out of this?
So the consensus by those who take care of the trees is that that the bladders and having volunteers do it and the like, which has occurred in the past, is not predictable enough to really or reliable enough to count on. And so in some of those harder places, say, I'd need to look at that list to see where planting trees in the median of the boulevard landed. But for example, everything that I've seen from those people that have done it in the median before says don't plant them out there unless you're going to irrigate, right? And so that you have very little maintenance, not no maintenance, but very little. The rest of the maintenance would really just be measured in public works time. And we already have folks going out and about maintaining common spaces, some of which are just mow and weed eat, and others are prune and dealing with more shrubbery. So we haven't measured that, and I don't anticipate any of this $10,000 going to pay a portion of someone's salary.
So any maintenance that city workers provide would be just absorbed into
their normal
budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Though we'd be designing it in such a way as to minimize that while increasing the likelihood of not just blowing money on those, what I'll call the TLC plantings that are your more high maintenance plantings.
Thank you.
Councilmember Scott?
Even though I feel that, we did struggle a little bit trying to get our budget where we wanted it last year, the numbers that are coming in, and I know that a month does not a trend make, but I'm very pleased with, the sales tax numbers that have come in so far. And I agree that some of it probably is internet funding that we're finally seeing the benefit of. So I'm not as concerned about the budget as I was before. So I move that we approve Resolution 2020-2.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve Resolution 2020-02. Is there any further discussion on that matter? Seeing none, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All opposed, no? Motion carries. I'll give you all an update once we figure out exactly what we'll be doing with that. That concludes the unfinished business. We'll move on to mayor's comments, and I have some. I received a letter today from the Arkansas State Aid Street Committee saying that we have been awarded $300,000 in state aid street city funds, which is a 100% grant paid for by that program that'll be used to overlay a portion of North Odom from Maumelle Boulevard to Woodland, I believe.
Is it needed?
That is the area that has been applied for several years now in grant. And it actually is, and one of the problems with that portion of North Odom is that it is so wide that, to going from Maumelle Boulevard up to, I think it's Woodland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Woodland that's $300,000 because it's 4 lanes, 5 lanes, if you count turning lanes, 6. It's very wide, and to go through, mill it all down and do that. That's been something that's been applied for at least 3 years in a row now, and we got that this time. And they have been out, RDOT, and we've driven the area, we've walked the area, Mr. Hogan and I and them, and it finally, we kind of got back up. The last time we got this grant was for the overlay of Edgewood here. So those that have been coming to this building for a little while or using Edgewood remembers when they did the milling and patched the holes, and we had the horrible road for what seemed like forever before they overlaid it. So that's good news. Don't forget National League of Cities is March 9th through 11th. Some of us will be there. For those of you who are not, RDOT is holding a public hearing on March 9th from 3:30 to 8:30, and that is discussion about the half-cent turnback that'll be on the ballot this fall. The Municipal League did pass out a flyer that listed how every city would be impacted if that amendment didn't pass. For Maumelle, it would be a $400,000 and $400,007 is what we get in that half-cent turnback. So that money goes away starting 2024 if that isn't passed. It's $10.5 million countywide. If you want to learn more about that and some of their projects and you're not going to the Municipal League, you can go to the National League of Cities Congressional Conference. You can go to that public hearing, and it's a combination of open floor and then presentation. So you can go see what they have to offer and make up your mind on that issue. Municipal League was this last week. We had 10 people from the city of Maumelle turn out between council members and staff. We have our own city clerk who was recently named a certified municipal official, and there's some debate as to whether Councilmember Gardner got his or not. Maybe he was registered under different email addresses and so has all the credits, but on paper he's not yet officially certified. So if he ever gets that, I'm sure we'll announce that. Let's see what else I had. I sent you all an email about Mr. Neri being out of the office. Please, if you have any questions or folks have questions about planning and zoning, I figured since Scott wasn't doing anything else at all, I'd go ahead and tack on that whole department's responsibilities on the condition that he not fall behind on anything else. It's an interesting time. We've had we're getting some interest in some areas, so that's that. And that concludes, at least so far as I can think of at the moment, mayor's comments. And we will move on to council member comments. Councilmember Gardner.
Just two things. Since we're talking trees tonight, and I want to be on the record with this, is sharing this. They brought this up. I didn't bring this up, but the city of Fayetteville, for the second year, is offering a free tree to anyone who cuts down a Bradford pear.
Does it have to be your Bradford pear?
It does not say whose Bradford pear, but we'd have to get some city attorney advice on that. But this is the second year in a row that the city of Fayetteville is giving away a free tree if you cut down a Bradford. The other thing, more serious thing, the Maumelle Charter today announced that they are going to build a new high school campus on White Oak Crossing. So y'all may have heard some rumblings about that, but they announced that today that they're going to build their new campus out there, so that end of the community should see some pretty amazing growth in the coming year. The plan is for that campus to be open August of 2021.
Will it be in the Maumelle side?
It is going to be on a 40-acre tract very close to Maumelle.
It is.
I will leave it at that.
It is adjacent on on two sides to the city of Maumelle. It's the area of land right by the baseball fields.
Is this going to be their junior high? Is that what I kind of?
It's going to be initially 8th through the 12th grade, and they will also have room to expand if they want to and build a middle school. So the current plan is that K through 3 will stay in the elementary school. 4 through 7 will go to the current high school building, and then 8 through 12 will be on the new campus. So
Pretty amazing.
They are growing. That's crazy.
I have a vested interest there. I've got 3 littles, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Any additional council member comments? Seeing none, Madam City Attorney?
No comments.
Madam City Clerk?
No comments.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.
I forgot we got all the signatures on Crystal Hill.
Yippee.
Get them all?